Putting labels on jars by hand is one of the worst tasks I've ever done. That's why machines like these exist. This is a manual label applier. And I'm going to show you how it works. Hopefully you can decide if you need one or want one for your manufacturing process. Let's take a closer look at how the machine works. Back here is where the labels are stored. This is called the spool. On this spool is a 3-inch core. That's what this means. It's the diameter of this cardboard tube. And that's pretty standard in the industry. A 3-inch core will work for just about all label appliers, so don't get hung up on that. So when you order your labels, make sure they come on a 3-inch core if you want them to work in a machine like this. After the labels come off the spool, it goes underneath this rod right here, which gives it the level that it needs to run through the machine. Then we have 2 of these little guide nuts. And then this right here is actually an indicator. It doesn't do anything. I know that when this bar reaches this split between the labels, I've applied an entire label. And then it comes down over this roller, and then it's fed underneath this roller right here, and then it hits this blade where it comes down at a sharp angle. As it rolls over this blade, the label starts to come off. See that? And after the spool goes down, it goes all the way down to the bottom where it winds onto a crank like so. Now you'll see that if we keep cranking it and it gets to right there, the label pops off. So then once the label pops off and this indicator gets to this white line right here in between the labels, we know that we've applied an entire label and we can stop turning the crank. Okay, I'm going to show you how this works. It's designed to accept a jar or a bottle. This arm comes down and then you crank this until you reach the certain mark. You lift it up and your label is applied to the bottle. Now sometimes you'll find these slight little air bubbles like this, and that is because you haven't set up your machine correctly. So let me walk through how I fine-tune this machine. It's probably going to be slightly different for you and other machines, but watching me do it, you'll absolutely be able to get the gist of it. Put it up against here. The bump stop hits the bottom of the bottle so it stays in the same spot every time. And then this roller comes down to keep it in place. And then you crank. As you see the labels feed through, I'm keeping my eye on this bar right here until it reaches that white line, and then I know it's done. I lift up and then I remove my bottle. But as you can see, there is a slight bubble that is happening. Usually that bubble happens when there's something going on with the configuration of the rollers. Either this part is off and the label is bending while it's coming down over the rollers, or this blade right here is having an issue, or these rollers and this roller aren't sized properly. There isn't enough space in between. So if you look, you can see down here, we're going to get up close and personal with this thing, and we're going to try and size it properly. In my opinion, it's not this right here. It's not the wiggle room in between these 2 guides. It has to do with the blade and the way that the rollers are positioned. Ideally, I want this roller to be like right on top to put downward pressure, not away pressure. And so I want to get these rollers positioned correctly so that they're suspending the bottle and the blade is right underneath. I don't think we're quite there yet. Now before we get started messing with that thing, we got to get all this slack here off the bottom, because having this much on the roller right here is causing a problem because it's more surface area. It's a wider diameter, meaning that the more when you turn the crank, it actually moves faster and pulls labels off the roll faster than it normally would if we were just using the smaller diameter. The problem with this machine is there's no way to like eject it and like pull it apart, so you have to cut it and then pull it apart manually. It's kind of a joke. So I grab it right here and I slice it, and then I bring this roll down like this, and then I just yard it off like this. I just pull it. It's ridiculous, I know, and it has to be done like every 300 to 500 labels. We did it. We're at the end. That's what it looks like when you're done. There's a giant pile on the floor, but that's okay because it's easy to put into the garbage. Now that we have the labels off, let's turn our attention back to the machine. We have this part right here, but we need to get it wrapped around this little rod right here. I'm going to get it lined up as best I can, and I'm just going to kind of wrap it around right here, and then I'm going to start twisting. And it will catch on itself, like so. And then I'll just feed this label up and hold on to it. Continue cranking until it pops off. So now we're started. We have it wrapped around the initial roll. Yes, you have to waste a label. The first time you get it set up like this or change anything, you need to run a couple labels off the machine just to let it get centered. Boop. You can see how easy that is to crank it when you have a lower gear ratio from having a smaller piece of metal. Anyways, discussion for another day. Let's take our jar, place it right here, put our roller down, and start rolling. Let's take a look. We have a little tiny bubble right there, and then we have a bubble right here. Let's try again and see how it does. Just put it right there. Push down the roller and give it a crank. Okay, so we have a tiny bubble right there, and nothing, little one right here. You can see it in the light when I roll it. What this is telling me is that in the beginning of the label application process, because the barcode comes off first, that there's something that just isn't working right. So let's try and adjust these rollers and figure that out. It is a total waste of your time to not calibrate this machine correctly. This one you can change the position of the roller arm by sliding it, so we're going to try that next. I'm just going to loosen these wing nuts right here, and then I'm going to place the bottle right in the middle, and I'm going to place it right on top, directly above the bottle, so it presses against both rollers and not in any one direction. And then I'm going to tighten it up. Alright, that feels pretty good. Alright, let's give it a shot. We're going to take it and we're going to place it right there on top. Give it a roll. It already feels a little bit better, I'm not going to lie. So if we're looking right here, I don't see any wrinkles. It's going around really nicely. And I see a little bubble right here. Okay, there's nothing you can't smooth out with your hand, but it's not perfect. So let's test it again and see if it was a one-off. Place it, push it, roll it. Let's lift it and take a look. Okay, I see a slight wrinkle, a bubble right there. So that didn't do the trick. And then I see a tiny bubble right here. Those will compound over time, so we're going to want to dial that in now. The next adjustment we're going to look at is this blade right here and how it sits on the rollers. So when you place the bottle on here, you don't want it to touch the blade. So I should be able to roll this and spin it without touching the paper or affecting it at all, which we can. So we know that this is just far enough away. We would like, ideally, like less than a millimeter, half a millimeter, the thickness of a label or so. And that looks pretty good to me, to be honest. So I don't know that it's the blade distance that we have to adjust. We have our set screw right in the middle, so I don't see any changes that we can make there. I think the only changes we can make right now that make sense are right here on this roller, because this one comes down and is directly on top, and ideally we should have it up like just a little bit more, like so. So let's adjust that direction and see how it does. That means we'll adjust this roller right here. They're just little wing nuts, but if you tighten them too much right away, it changes your adjustment. Okay, so now we have to adjust the blade up a little bit. To do that, we're going to use some of the Allen keys that came with it. There's a blade adjustment Allen screw right here, and you can just loosen it up like so, and you can see the blade shift. The blade is this brown part right here. So let's remove that bottle. So this one's nice and loose now. I'm going to do the same on the other side. You can see it open up like so. We're just going to lift it up a little bit. One of the ways that we can figure out this adjustment is by loosening it, pushing the blade against the roller, and then pushing down on the bottle. And that just kind of shoves the blade down a little bit to where it needs to be. Another thing to take into consideration is make sure that this can reach the center. You might have lifted it up too far with the rollers by moving these in too much. So it's all a fine dance. It's all touch and go, honestly. Alright, let's run a couple labels off it and see how it does. Let's do a trial run with the bottle. Something didn't work. It got stuck. The blade wasn't tight enough and it opened up during when we applied it. Okay, let's try it again. Oh, see this right here too? This means the label is staying attached to the sticker. That's a problem. It means the angle on here is too tight, or this is too thin in here and it's tearing. Let's fix it. There we go. Alright, let's run a few more labels off it and test it. Okay, if we put it on, doesn't look like we're touching the paper too much. Our stop is in the right place. It's tight. I'm happy with it. Let's see how it does. Ooh, we had trouble pulling it off right there. I wonder why that was the way that it was. We have some minor bubbling right here. Nothing you can't push down with your thumb though. Looks like we have an unacceptable amount of bubbling there. So let's take it off and try again after we run a few through the machine. I don't see it moving on the rollers or walking back and forth at all. Let's see what we got. See that little tiny bubble right there in the middle? There you go. You can see it in the light now. If you can press it out with your thumb, it should be okay. And that one went away with my thumb. But then we have this little one right here. Those start to compound and they add up. And they can make your label look unprofessional and they can cause problems down the road. We don't want that. So we still need to continue to adjust. Okay, there's one more thing we haven't tried yet. Now that everything is kind of like lined up and we've played with the rollers, what I'm seeing is just such slight bubbling that I think a little bit of added pressure with this handle, now that it's directly above, would make a difference. So I'm going to just slightly adjust this handle so it's directly above the bottle, and then we're going to try applying some more pressure. But I want to make sure the roller's straight and in line so it's not applying like a torsion force. You want it to all be applying like an even straight pressure amongst all of it. You see what I mean? Just like that. It's got to flow. We want it to flow. Alright, so here's how we're going to do it. We're going to place the bottle right here like so. We're going to press it down, but we're going to apply firm pressure, probably like 4 fingers worth of pressure, maybe 5 pounds. And then we're going to crank it all the way through. We're going to lift it up and we're going to take a look for any bubbles. I don't see any. I think it's looking great. Another thing we're looking for is for these ends to be lined up right here. And they are. If they weren't lined up, it would mean that this was off center and it was going one direction or another. And so in order to figure that out, you put your head down here like this and you just kind of look at the rollers and you look for straight lines to make sure it's all going in a straight line. If it's all going in a straight line, then you know you're all set. These little set screws, or I don't even know what you would call them, these little locks, big fat locking nut washer things, are how you determine which direction this label moves. Okay, let's do one more. We're going to put it down like so, and then we're going to roll, 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 roll. When the silver bar gets to the white line, we know we're over. We lift it up and we take a look. There was a tiny bubble there, but it looks to be resolved. That's looking pretty good. I'm happy with that. I like that a lot. Okay, so if you look closely, you can see that it feeds through. See that line right here? This is my indicator. So to adjust the indicator, I just simply unscrew this right here and I put it wherever I want it to be. And it will tell me, oh, I need to keep twisting until it meets right there, and then I know the whole entire label is applied. It's really, really cool, primitive technology that is just simple and beautiful in its design. So once you get in the flow of this machine, you can do them really fast, like every couple of seconds, which is pretty impressive. Here's a picture of the instruction manual in case you wanted to know what the model number was and who the brand is. And when I looked at the manual, it had nothing. No setup instructions, no nothing on how to calibrate or adjust the machine, just a list of what it came with. I had to put it together just by looking at videos on their Amazon page to see how it was put together like mechanically, hoping that it was correct. So I hope this video serves any of you who have purchased a label machine similar to this. They're all pretty much the same. So would I buy another machine like this? The short answer is yes. I think that this machine was worth every penny. I spent about $130 on Amazon. It was shipped in a couple of days. I was able to put it together, yes, with some trouble, but it eventually ended up going together. Most of these label appliers don't have this arm right here, and this arm I think is a crucial factor. You could see just by how we applied pressure on the top roller that it actually removed some of the bubbles and it went on a little bit smoother. I think that if you do get a label applier, you need to have an arm like this to apply pressure directly above. There's a few changes I would make about this unit, however. This blade, whatever surface is on there to cause like a non-stick or slippery surface, it wore off pretty quickly from just the back of the paper. So it's all torn apart behind where the labels are, which has increased the friction and made it just a little bit more difficult to crank. The crank is also pretty small and pretty chintzy, to be honest with you, so I'm going to replace this with a bigger homemade handle just to make it easier to operate and use. The setup has 0 instructions. That was a total bummer. But in the event you do get this figured out, in the event you do spend the time to calibrate it properly, it can be a huge time saver. This machine will increase your efficiency 100x when it comes to this process. So when you look at it from a dollar standpoint, spending about $130 on a machine that can improve your efficiency about 100x when you're applying labels to bottles, I think it's worth every penny. I would recommend something like this for anyone who's doing runs of less than 5,000 units at a time. Whenever we get this thing out, we're doing a run of 2,000 bottles. It's not that difficult and it really speeds up the process and makes it easy. If we were doing runs of more than 10,000, I would rely on a manufacturer or a co-packer or someone else to use fully automated equipment. But then there's that spot from 5 to 10,000 where it's more than just the manual amount but less than fully automated. That's when I would consider going to pneumatic or an electric powered label applier. They make units like this with an arm that comes down, and every time the arm touches, it actuates a motor and it applies a label. They're just about 2 to 3 times as much as this. I think it's worth it if you're going to be doing more than like 30,000 units that way. Otherwise, I would just suck it up with the manual unit. This is a much lower investment as well, and a lot of smaller businesses aren't doing runs of a few thousand, they're doing runs of a few hundred. So in the event that that's you and you want a cheaper option to be able to just get the labels applied really easily, definitely check out a machine like this. Now, this machine will handle all different sizes of stuff, so you could technically do wine bottles. You can do chapstick on here too. It's not as easy because the weirder and the smaller that it gets, the faster the label gets applied. It'll be a little nuanced figuring it out, and I haven't tested it personally, but in theory it should work based on the way that the components are set up. I really struggled to figure out small scale manufacturing. As you can see, we're in my garage right now, and I'm doing small runs of Maker's Magic, about 2,000 at a time, but eventually a co-packer is going to take over, and they're going to be doing runs of 10,000 at a time. And so now that I figured out the process, I can share that process with them, and they can copy it just at scale and do it our way a little bit better. I fully intend anyone that's using this machine for it to be a temporary thing. This should not be a long-term solution for you. You should use it to either get your first production run off the ground. You should use it for prototyping. You can use it for, speed, for getting labels applied without needing a manufacturer. You can just do it yourself. You can also do it for a launch or a limited edition run. things like that. I wouldn't recommend using this long term for production. There are many better options out there that can save wrists and hands, and they can use electricity to really make life easy. This is something that I think we're going to get rid of as soon as our co-packer takes over, because we only need it for testing and the initial launches of small batch products. I really hope this video helped. I really like talking about this stuff. E-commerce is my wheelhouse. As I build up Scorch Marker, I just really like sharing stuff that I've learned. If you like this kind of stuff, check out this video next. I think it'll be helpful.